Hello folks, very happy to have you here. Very excited to share this one with you actually, because it's my first ever interview on the channel, and I'm interviewing no other than Mary Spender. Someone that I've followed for a long time. I admire very much. I feel a little bit starstruck, I will be honest with you, but who cares? You know, she's one of the best at what she does on YouTube in terms of creating music content about songwriting, and of course guitar. You know, so there's a lot of juice in this, guys, for anyone who's interested in what it's like for someone like Mary, who is an accomplished musician, to guitar technique, songwriting processes, and generally what it's like to be a musician in the 21st century. So, and Mary's got a few gigs coming up in September, which I'm super excited about. I'm going to be at St Luke's in Glasgow on the 30th of September, so if any of you are around, make sure to grab your ticket, and I promise to buy you a pint or a can of Coke or a glass of water. Alright, but it'd be great to see you there. And of course, she's all over the UK, so make sure if you like Mary's stuff, then grab a ticket. It's going to be an amazing night of great music and great guitar. So yeah, other than that, guys, just get your feet up, get your whiskey, your wine, your tea, whatever it is, and enjoy. So, Mary Spender. I'll try not to say your name, your full name, Mary Spender, but it is a great name. Is it your real name, or is it a stage name?
No, I mean, it's my real name, and it's so funny how I've had a few comments, saying, is it a stage name? And yet I've been, obviously it's been my full name since birth, but since being a singer-songwriter since the age of 15, I felt like it was a very uncool thing to actually have your name as your stage name. But I couldn't come up with any other band names. I was in bands with friends, and we always struggled. And I was just sort of like, I know there's St. Vincent, but she's actually Annie Clark, and all these other amazing singer-songwriters who decided to have almost like an alter ego. But my songs were so personal that I was like, do you know what? I'm just gonna roll with it. And then luckily named, had all the YouTube channel, URL, MySpace, Facebook. When it's a real name, it's less likely that other people have it. So stuck with it. And now people are like, oh, is that your real name? And I'm like, wow, okay, how things have changed.
Yeah, it is a great name. It's like Stevie Nicks.
Oh, okay. Well, we're now best friends.
Yeah. So I seen that you got some concerts coming up in September, which is really exciting. And I know you've got one in Glasgow, so I thought that would be a great opportunity to start a conversation and get you on the channel. So thank you so much for agreeing to do that, firstly. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask you some questions that are, kind of relevant to my audience, and then I'd like to hear more about your upcoming concerts and your new album and stuff, which is very exciting. So in terms of guitar, Mary, how long have you been playing guitar for? If you can tell me a little bit about your journey. I think I watched somewhere that you started with violin. Is that right?
Yes. I think I started with singing at age 6, and piano lessons followed quite quickly. Then just the nature of the classical music that I was sort of wanting to get into, to be able to get into some schools where I grew up, I had to play an orchestral instrument. So violin was also there. And I feel like it must have been within the space of a year that I started all three properly. I did end up switching to viola when I was a teenager, because I actually had an amazing community school on Saturday mornings called Salisbury Area Young Musicians, and they're still going. And they were offering free viola lessons to violinists who firstly didn't either really like the instrument or wanted to just adapt, because if you go to Royal Academy when you're 18, 19, usually violinists need to have viola as well. So they lent me a viola, and I just ended up falling in love with it way more than violin. Never got on well with that instrument. But viola really sat well. It got me into university. But in that time, all that classical music was so academic and restrictive to me, and I wasn't really all that good, but I was just doing so many hours that I sort of, you know, took the grades and I was okay. I wasn't a natural. But guitar was my therapy. So I was teaching myself because my parents were sick and tired of me already not practicing the other instruments. And they were like, why would we pay for lessons when you're just going to be lazy on that too? And I was like, well, what if I actually worked really, really hard on it and started to write songs on it, play in bands with it? And so guitar was always my main gal. But yeah, once I got through university and finished up my sort of viola education, I realized I was never going to be any better than I was when I was 22. So I just switched full into singer-songwriter mode, and then that's been the last 12 or 13 years. But I guess I've been playing guitar for 22 years now, which is a very scary long time. I should be way, way better than I am.
No, I think you're amazing. I think you're great. I love your tech. I've actually got your course on your finger style as well, because I love the way that you. It's one of those things. Every time I see you play, it makes me want to pick up the guitar, and it makes me.
Thank you.
No, it's great, but you've got a very unique style. I think you use really interesting chord voicings. You've got a really interesting way to pick the guitar as well. So where does that come from? Is that developed over time, or is it from particular influences that you've had? Or
I was always a very percussive player because I was when I was doing open mics or gigs and I only had sort of 2 songs, and I was playing in rock bands and everything. I was always quite like hearty on the guitar, so I was doing a lot of strumming with a plectrum, and I do remember a bit of a shift when I first heard John Mayer, and I heard "Stop This Train," and I was like, that sounds impossible to play, and obviously it's fingerstyle, cannot be using a plectrum to play that. I want to figure that out, and so just tried to figure out how to translate what I could do with a plectrum into 5 plectrums essentially. And it just didn't click and didn't click and didn't click. And I'm sure all your audience understand this feeling where you're so obsessed with a technique or a method, and you're just like, but my brain is not connecting to my hands. And I couldn't get it, couldn't play anything fingerstyle, was trying to just do like little, even my own songs, translate them into this new way of playing. Nothing was clicking until one day I suddenly couldn't stop doing it, and it worked, and I could get everything. I could get the sort of percussive slap in, and suddenly it just clicked. But it probably took, it must have taken months. But yeah, I don't know why I then just basically made this huge switch, but I think it was because people were saying, that's not normal, what you're doing. And so I just sort of went with it. And then to accompany singing as well, I'd been so loud on the instrument beforehand that my songs were quite like having to be quite aggressive, rocky songs. And I realized, maybe this isn't the avenue I want to keep going down. And I don't necessarily want to be playing in a rock band. I want to be a singer-songwriter and maybe write some more sensitive material. So it all just sort of started gelling together. And then, with your right hand, because I'm right-handed, sorry for all the lefties out there, obviously it would be the opposite. I realized that my left hand was a little bit insufficient, and probably still is, but I broke my middle finger when I was on my left hand when I was at university, and that opened me up to playing with my thumb on the fretboard. And so when I got the middle finger back in action, I suddenly could do different chord voicings than I could do beforehand. So I was just always experimenting with the guitar, and I wasn't afraid of looking at sort of Andy McKee and Mike Dawes, seeing what they were doing, looking at John Mayer, looking at Stevie Ray Vaughan or B.B. King. And I was like, how do I, when they all have such a distinctive sound, how do I create my own where you go, oh, that's Mary Spender? And it all just sort of became this thing. And then, I don't know, like people ask me now, they're like, do you play chords ever? Like just full on strummy chords? And only just now, after, maybe 10 years or so of writing these sort of finger-style, intricate songs, I've actually started been going back to simpler chord patterns and just writing really great melody lines and simpler guitar parts. But then also yesterday I wrote something really, really intricate and in an alternative tuning, and I was like, ooh, she's back.
Well, you've definitely accomplished getting the Mary Spender sound for sure. Like when you hear a song, it's you, which is special. I mean, it's very rare now, I guess, to get your own style.
Well, it's not something that you can rush either. I remember people telling me when I was 18, they didn't know who I was or what I sounded like, and I wasn't defined enough. And this was record labels as well. I was trying to get meetings. They weren't pursuing me. I was literally just finding them on LinkedIn. And I was just there being like, well, I don't really have a sound. I didn't know what I sounded like. And it is just one of those things that if you're an artist and someone's telling you don't have a sound because you're so many different genres or you have so many different interests, just have faith that it will all condense down. And if I'm now 34 and I've only just released my, full-on studio debut album, everything ends up making sense as long as you just keep working at it. And as long as you are open to adapting and you're open to criticism, and not being too defiant down a lane that maybe just isn't what people want to listen to. And it just really depends on what you want to get out of your own music. But yeah, it's one of those things where now people tell me that I sound like me. And I was like, wow, have I really changed? But I guess it's just evolved and has sort of become a little bit more fluid.
Totally. I think, John Mayer's like my hero as well. And I think it was him that said that you develop your own style when you fail at imitating your heroes or something like that. So I guess it's a mash of your influences that you imitate until eventually you come up with your own kind of style. And it's really interesting to hear that, the finger style and the percussiveness didn't come naturally to you, I think, because I'm sure there's a lot of my students and a lot of my audience as well that feel it, that and it's inspiring to have somebody like yourself that seems to do it so effortlessly, to express that it didn't come so naturally to you. So that's really inspiring.
Well, I mean, there are some people on social media who make it out like it does come naturally, and there are wunderkinds, obviously, but really, it's really, really tricky. You're getting your brain and your fingers to do something that is completely unnatural. And I mean, you don't even really notice your progression as well. So now I do find it effortless. But if you told me to switch the guitar over and swap hands, I would be back to being completely useless. So it's just one of those things. It is just practice. It's hours and hours of... I mean, for me, the thing that really helped me was playing 4-hour cover sets in pubs and clubs for, 100 quid here, 100 quid there. And I was doing cover songs, and I was trying to make these cover songs my own style. And that also helped me define my sound by using other people's material. So it's really great to learn songs verbatim as they were written, but then also try and translate it into who you are, and what you do, because then you genuinely can do a cover song, but it will sound like you, and it will sound like you wrote it. And I think that's really fun and interesting, and yeah, it just pushes you again, teaches you more chord voicings, or just being imaginative with the instrument, not so strict and sort of academic about it. It's to inspire emotions in other people. It's not to be correct all the time musically or whatever,
Totally. Yeah. I And actually, just talking about the way that you play guitar and your songwriting process, I'm always quite curious, like what that's like, in terms of, you've got a lot of really cool riffs through your songs, and really interesting progressions and amazing lyrics as well. How does that go for you? Where does it start? Does it start with the music? Do you just sit with your guitar and play, or does it start with the lyrics, or is it a little bit of everything?
I sit with the guitar in my hands and I usually write everything all at the same time. And I was actually shocked to learn that, someone like Eric Clapton writes. I hope I'm getting this wrong. Feel free to correct me. I hope I'm getting it right even. I understand that he wrote Layla, but then added the solo later in the studio. Whereas in my head, I was like, oh no, he just came up with that riff and then it inspired Layla. And that's how I feel. Like I write a riff or like a finger picking pattern. And then through that feeling of whatever that is, I write the lyrics because I feel like the storyline has to match what's going on in the music, or you have to make an artistic decision for it to be maybe a bit happier in terms of the music, but maybe melancholy in the lyrics, or vice versa, or something. So I write everything all at once, really. I'm always trying to experiment and open my eyes to other ways of writing, as you should. But yeah, I do just have to sit, improvise. I record everything on my phone, pretty much the whole process of every song, probably in the last 5 years. I've got voice notes of every step. So I can listen back to them. And if I'm like, why didn't I ever go back and repeat that of what I originally had as a chorus? And that sort of nature of like always writing really helps you when you're suddenly, you've got writer's block or something, you're not feeling it. You can always go back to your sort of archive. So yeah, I find it very cathartic, and I do genuinely get that little like feeling of like, ooh, I want to write a song. And I know that I'm pretty lucky to have that. But also, you have people like Ed Sheeran who just sit down and write 4 songs a day and write absolute smash hits, whether or not you like his music. He's obviously done quite well out of them. And I just never really wanted to be that kind of songwriter. It feels like it's still my hobby side of my music career. So yeah, but it's all about that enjoyable experience of singing over guitar playing. And it also helps me practice if I'm playing the riffs while singing. Some people wonder how you learn how to sing and play guitar at the same time. And I'm like, well, if you're writing and singing at the same time, you're already getting those practice minutes in. So it becomes a lot more natural playing something quite intricate while singing over the top of it. Your brain is used to doing the 2 things at once. So,
yeah, that's really interesting, and I think a lot of my students struggle with playing and singing at the same time. And I have to be honest with you. I think, was it the first one in your course? Is it Primrose? Is that right?
Yeah.
I really struggled with that, if I'm being honest. It seems quite simple, but when you try to play at speed and then try to sing over it, it's like, wow.
Well, that means the world. Thank you. If you find it difficult, then I'm like, oh, okay, that's like a little pat on the back for me. But I mean, because you're such an exquisite teacher as well,
Oh, thank you. That's a great compliment coming from yourself. But I think it is that when you play your own music and your own stuff, it maybe comes a little bit easier, especially if it's with your own style.
Oh, for sure.
But nonetheless, for me, very very impressive. I love a lot of your riffs are just. There's one in particular, right? I'm wondering if you can guess it from your new album. That it's my favourite song on the album, and I'm a huge Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, and it's got Red Hot Chili Peppers all over it for me. I don't know if you can think of what it is.
Wait, let me think. Is it in terms of riffs? I'm like, it's
just the running through the whole thing. It's just for me very very John Frusciante.
Is it One Kept Secret or is it One to the West Coast?
One to the West Coast.
One to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I really love that riff. That's really good. How did you write that? Was that did you come up with that riff first, or was it the song, the chicken or the egg?
I mean, I must have. I know I was possibly in Chicago because that's what that song is about. And I think I was utterly heartbroken. So I'm not entirely sure I can remember how that riff came to be, other than maybe just through sheer emotion. And I think I was just sort of a bit taken aback by when you're in standard tuning, there's still so much potential when you're playing fingerstyle to remain in that tuning, not have to always drift to alternate tunings. And if you just like make sure you position your right hand just right. I mean, this is just what I think about when I'm playing that song. You can get so much out of the strings, especially like, I guess that one is the sort of bass line's on the obviously bottom E, but then I'm up to is it the B string?
It looks like you're using the G shape going up and down the fret, but I don't know if that's right. It looked like that.
Yeah, it sort of looks like that, but I'm not using my index finger. I'm sort of just going, and it's actually like, it sounds like I'm in something else, but I'm not. I think that's always like the fun thing for me, where people are like, "Oh, are you in an alternative tuning right now?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm in standard." And that's simply, I mean, I do have songs in. I love detuning my A string to a G, and just so one note change, and how many possibilities and how many songs I've gotten out of that tuning is just like absolutely amazing. But yeah, like Primrose is in standard. But yeah, One to the West Coast, I'm just trying to think. But yeah, I was in a bit of a messy ending of a relationship. So
well, that's another thing, right? And I've got a huge respect for people that can do this, because I love to write songs. I'm good at I like to write riffs and little musical pieces, and that's pretty much what I do on my channels. That's my creative outlet. I make up little bits and teach them. And I've tried my best to write lyrics, and I always think, right, you obviously wear your heart in your sleeve. With your lyrics, they're all very deep and heartfelt, and you can feel the pain in them. And is it hard to be that vulnerable, to know that whoever you're writing about especially could see it? And for me, that stops me dead in my tracks, and then I just start writing comedy stuff because I'm not facing my emotions. But
wow. Well, I'd say comedy stuff is impossible to write. So if you can do that, then you have to go down that avenue, because I think, comedic.
You say that, right? But my main hat with my friends is called Zebra Mouse.
Zebra Mouse.
That yeah. Body of a zebra, head of a mouse. It's steep stuff, but that was me starting to write something emotional. I went Zebra Mouse. So yeah. Sorry. What is that like for you? Is it difficult, or is it natural?
I think it's always a little bit nerve-wracking, and I think you should feel a little bit vulnerable sometimes when you're singing these sorts of songs. Not every type of song requires this sort of emotion behind it, or cutting remarks sometimes, which I like to fill my songs with. I think when I first started, I didn't know what heartbreak was or what love was, obviously, because I was 15 years old. I thought I knew everything. I obviously did not. And so I disguised a lot of my lyrics, and I read a lot of poetry to basically take inspiration from lines that I liked the look of. And I'm not a huge reader because I come from a family of bookworms, so I very much know that it's the area I'm deficient in. And I'm much more about music than I am about words. But the sort of marriage of poetry and lyrics is something I'm still trying to improve on. So disguised everything at the beginning. I tried to make it seem really deep, even though actually the songs weren't that deep. And then I started just being a little bit more obvious, and it's almost like notes from my journal, you know? And I still like those songs because they are the most cathartic. They genuinely do feel like a release from the pain. So it sounds like I'm extremely sad and heartbroken or melancholy, but they helped the process of getting through whatever I was going through. So yeah, there have definitely been, I mean, I've definitely had exes be like, how dare you write that song about me? But I've never named them, so they can't be that mad. And yeah, whereas now I'm actually trying to open myself up for collaboration a little bit more with lyrics. So I can be pretty open that I work with my brother, and he's got a whole literature background. And yeah, he's just been pushing me to be like, maybe you could say something different, or maybe you could turn it around. And then he's got the challenge of, you know, having written poetry, showing you that sometimes it doesn't work. It's very difficult. Lyrics are definitely a different art form to poetry. And it's kind of why when people are like trying to write songs in ChatGPT, it doesn't work as lyrics, because it's just rhyming, you know, insensitive words, and it's not musical. So yeah, it's still something I'm still trying to get better at. But I also have surprised myself with some of the things I have come up with, because I was like, I don't know, I really love some of my quips, or, you know, one of the songs I've got is called Darling, You Need Therapy. And I was just like, I just think that's great. It's true. So, yeah, and then like One to the West Coast, that was just like a really cool story. And it's also surprising to many people how truthful the songs are as well. Like, people are like, oh, what's the story behind this? And I'm like, well, what's the story in the song? Like, maybe I've dramatized it a little bit, but pretty much, yeah, no, here's the backstory, but it's the same as the lyrics, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's wow, really cool. I'm just trying to get my head around that as well. Like, again, I can't imagine being that vulnerable, but I think that is what it's where all the great music comes from, and I think that's honestly why I resonate with your music, and why it will be it will be a big success, is because that is the kind of stuff that resonates with people because your story kind of feels like my story in a way as well, because you resonate with those feelings. If you've been through heartbreak and you've been through those kind of things, then, you know, when you're really authentic and vulnerable at that, then I think that's what makes musicians great musicians, you know.
And going back to finding your sound, you know, I love the saying, I will miscredit it if I say who I think it's who said it, forgive me. The universe is found in the particular. So you can go very, very specific into your journey, and the locations, the people, the personalities, the very like nuanced moments of whether it's falling in love, falling out of love, or experiencing something new, or traveling, or you can get really, really specific, and it feels individual, but actually it creates the same emotion that you're trying to go for in someone else. And as you said, you know, like, I mean, I was really trying to write a little bit broader and more, maybe slightly more generic, because I saw all the pop stars doing that, and I was like, well, I want to write a good pop song too, you know, even if it's masked in guitar playing and a sort of full band setup. The core of pop is popular, so you want your song to be listened to a lot by, you know, a huge group of people. But yeah, I mean, my songs also, I have come to terms with the fact that this sort of vulnerability and this sort of lyric writing or guitar playing is not for everyone as well. But at least I can communicate a lot in the 3 minutes, more than just being like, hey baby, love ya, like, you know. And it's also that my biggest worry is writing something that I genuinely think is original and then hearing it on the radio by some other artist. And that's the other thing, especially with AI duplicating or uploading however many songs, people writing prompts, everything is going to get a lot more generic, even more so. So you really have to get into the nitty and gritty of your life, of your deepest, darkest secrets, of something super, super human, because otherwise you're just going to sound like absolutely everything else. So yeah, I think it is really nerve-wracking, and a lot of people are scared of being that raw and emotionally sort of fragile in music. But I'm like, I mean, if I upset, I don't know who I would upset really, other than just, yeah.
I suppose it's all in your head, really, about who will, if you're thinking about who's going to be offended or whatever. But again, I think the most important thing is that, yeah, you're having that cathartic healing process when you're writing your music. That way you can continue to do it and enjoy it for what you do. And it also resonates with other people, right? Because for it to be sustainable, always has to come from that place of authenticity and vulnerability, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with that statement more.
And you touched on something, I mean, this gets into something else I wanted to talk to you about, when you're talking about AI and all this kind of stuff, right? Because we're living in a crazy time, right? And being a musician now, and I've never really been out and done any like gigs and this kind of thing, right? I do have friends and musician friends who are living and trying to make it as musicians this day and age. And your email list, I think it's titled The 21st Century Musician, right? And this is living as a musician now, I guess, is completely different. Even 10 years ago is completely different. So I'm just interested to know, you're obviously going to be going out and gigging now. It feels like a new chapter for you, because you've been, I guess, up to now, like on YouTube and social media, and obviously you've been doing your gigs, your covers and stuff like that. But now you've got your new album. You're going out there, you're headlining acts. So this is exciting, but I guess terrifying as well. So if you can tell me what are the the disadvantages to being a musician now, but what have you found any pros as well, any advantages to being a musician now than there was, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago?
Oh, well, I would probably say there are only pros to being a musician now than even 10 years ago. And maybe that's just because I'm biased with my own career. Because 10 years ago, when I was pretty fresh out of university, I was trying to find the gigging scene in Bristol where I was living. And I luckily met some musicians who had lost a few musicians to cruise ships. They'd sort of gone off and done the cruise ship thing for 6 months. And so I had my friend Chris, who needed a singer and guitarist, and he just helped me find venues who were willing to pay 50 quid to 100 quid, sometimes a little bit more, to do those sorts of cover sets when weddings weren't in season. And then the summers, we would try and do as many weddings as possible. And I sort of found my niche with doing ceremonies rather than maybe like the after, the actual party. I'd sort of leave that to the bigger bands, and I'd just do the sort of more vulnerable acoustic, intro, outro, while people are signing the registry. So I found that very challenging and difficult, and it took my creative time away from me, because I was driving to a show, doing the show to 3 people sometimes, and then driving home and then going to bed at 2 or 3 a.m. And it wasn't ever really enough sustainable money to live off. It wasn't, it wasn't guaranteed every month. So I'd have like a 9 to 5 job where I was like in an admin department or operations, or I then ended up doing like finance work because people were always needing people to do their expenses and stuff like that. And, it was like £8 an hour. And I would do that 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And then I'd gig Friday evenings, Saturday evenings, and then Sunday afternoons. So I just found the internet, even at that point, wasn't established enough to be able to be earning money. Obviously, some people were in the huge sort of leagues of YouTube, but I mean, it was still such early days. I'm trying to even think about like what the monetization was. Then I started seeing daily vloggers like Casey Neistat starting to earn money and build businesses through YouTube in 2015. So I guess that is almost 10 years ago. But I just think any musician that was talking to me at that time was already talking about how absolutely impossible it was to be a musician of any kind, let alone an original singer-songwriter. So there hasn't been a better time than now to build a middle-class business. I'm not talking about like actual class system, but just as in like you're either penniless or you're Taylor Swift. There was no in-between beforehand unless you were, a teacher, unless you were in a successful weddings cover band. I guess, the bands that we were sort of seeing at festivals or in the charts or whatever, you never know what the deal was behind the scenes with the record labels at that time. And we mostly know that they weren't all that great, or you'd be in debt to your label, or you'd be dropped. So I'm just trying to think of a better time than now, because now you don't really want to be Taylor Swift either. Sorry to, burst the bubble. But like, you don't really want to be that famous. Yes, you have all the money in the world, but you have so much scrutiny, pressure, lack of privacy. I mean, I would love to perform to 80,000 people every night, but actually, would I? Do you actually see the whites of their eyes? Like, I mean, she's just one of a kind. And instead, I'm much more interested in showing musicians that you can be helping or talking to or sort of entertaining 1,000 true fans, the Kevin Kelly rule of 1,000 true fans, and you can be living like a lawyer can be living, but doing the thing you love for 40 hours or maybe a few more hours a week than maybe doing a job that you thought would earn you money, but you don't actually enjoy. So you still have to be good. You still have to work on your craft. You can't be a crappy musician, just like, in other jobs, if you're crap, you get fired. So, it still takes a lot of hard work. But do you want to be doing this for the rest of your life? Yeah, you probably do. If you're a musician, you didn't get into it for the money anyway. That's not why you started. So if you could end up building a business that is either a really healthy 5 figures or maybe even 6 figures, that's pretty cool. It's really, really cool. And yeah, I would say when it comes to me going back to gigging now, if I didn't have it's not a secure way of earning money at all being online, but if I didn't have the guarantee of my YouTube business model, I couldn't afford to go on tour. So and even now I'm nervous. It's 48 days away and ticket sales are really slow. Everyone keeps saying, they're like, oh, don't worry, we're used to that. People in other bands are like, hey, the last 3 weeks are when it actually picks up, or even you might sell tickets on the day because people don't know what their plans are. Post-pandemic, it's super different, it's changed. But that's a very nerve-wracking business model for me, where I'm like, okay, so like my potential loss right now is, probably 10 to 15 grand. And I'm like, that's a lot of money, So I have to spend the next 6 weeks really, really just reminding people, telling people, being vulnerable about what this is and how it's going to be a good evening. It's going to be enjoyable. I'm going to be in tip-top shape, hopefully. And if you like my music, then come and see me play. And if you don't worry about it.
fully understand.
I'm sure you're going to be absolutely fine. I mean, when I was purchasing tickets, I was like quickly like I didn't want to. I want to make sure I got in early because I'm pretty sure that they'll all sell out. And I think, and I was talking to my friend about this yesterday, who's like also a musician, and the importance of because I do hear other musicians complain a lot about how it is these days and what they need to do. But I think it comes down to your attitude, right? And you having to adapt to what you need to do. And I think a lot of that comes down to what you've done amazingly is build a community as well. And I think that's the way things are going. Build a fan base through social media, and they'll always have your back.
Well, they do and they don't. Like it goes back to attitude as well. Like your audience has so much other stuff to watch or listen to that they will move on if you aren't showing up every week. And yeah, when it comes to musicians complaining, oh my God, I hear it every day where people are like, well, I just don't really want to be on camera. And I'm like, well, sorry, but therefore you're not going to be a full-time musician in this day and age. Like maybe you'll make a nice living being in a cover band, or if you're classical, then you can teach, or you can be in an orchestra, maybe, if you're lucky. But I mean, the competition is so fierce in every single avenue of music because it's something people genuinely dedicate their lives to, and they've been doing since they were 5 years old. Like my friends who are doctors or lawyers or any of these other like quite sort of well-established professions have not been lawyers since they were 5 years old. So like the hunger behind musicians and for the cream to just rise to the top, it's what we want. We want good art out in the world. So yeah, if you're gonna be a musician nowadays, you really do have to have a YouTube channel. You really do have to have, whether it's a podcast, you have to find your lane of like what kind of content you want to be creating. You need to have some kind of platform that helps you sustain yourself. So you have to have an audience to contribute to that platform. So yeah, it's a lot, but I mean, every job, every career is a lot. And I feel really fortunate that my parents have both been so hardworking in their lives, and I don't think I've ever heard them complain about working. And yet musicians love to complain about working. So I fully get it when people on the internet are in the comments section and someone's talking about burnout or whatever. They're like, hey, well, how about me? I'm a nurse in the NHS. I burnt out 20 years ago, but guess where I am? Still working. Still hard work. I'm just using that example because my mum is a nurse in the NHS. So, I mean, go ahead, complain, but no one cares. No one cares because they're all tired too. Everyone is tired. So how do you want to spend your days? And to be honest, I want to spend my days making YouTube videos because I genuinely love it as well. And I always think, whatever it is that you find to be play, then you're a winner already. Like no one can take that away from you. If you see it as a game, whether it's getting absolutely monstrous on guitar and then, just putting, you don't, it's not even that hard. Like you put your phone in front of you and you can record now. When I first started, I had to learn how to use DSLRs because phones weren't good enough they weren't just good enough quality. And I wanted quality behind it. And now it's all opened up this avenue of like making music documentaries, which is like my vibe. And that's where I want to go. I want to get into proper long form storytelling about music history that I just feel, it's being defunded everywhere. Music education is just not taken seriously. And I just think it's really, really important. But I also think it's important to tell stories that people genuinely love and, don't find boring or whatever. So yeah, that's where I stand. I'll jump off my soapbox, but yeah, I don't know what job or career, especially if you're expecting to earn money from it. It's not easy. Nothing is easy. So.
But But that's where the joy comes in, right? It's like when you've, if it was easy, then everybody'd be doing it, and you wouldn't get the same satisfaction, right? But yeah, I just had a little burst of excitement there when you were talking about your documentaries as well, because I loved the Martin guitar. Well, I love the Stratocaster. I love that stuff, man. So I'm excited, and I think, I think that'll do very well. So yeah, more stuff like that.
We're still learning, and I wouldn't be able to do all that stuff without my team now. Like, that's the other thing. And I remember this decision when I was about 7 years old. I remember being like, I don't want to sign to a record label. I want to own a record label. And now I feel like I get to, but it's like a media company production house. And so I have an amazing editor, who's called John. George, he produces and helps me research, and just literally sometimes I feel like everyone else is the brains behind me. I've just had a new starter called Emmy, who is going to be doing like photos and videos with me. I still film. I still, I mean, everything. It's kind of like the worst business model, actually, because I'm the friction, Whereas usually I could just be like, I'd like to one day be just CEO of a business and not have to be on camera all the time, but in this moment. And yeah, just the stories that I think we can tell, even if they've been told before, it's like, well, there are new things coming out about certain bands and certain research being done. And I don't know, there's still so much room for improvement on that. And yeah, we'll see. They just take a lot longer than YouTube would allow. So you can't make a documentary every week, sadly. It wouldn't be the quality that we'd want to produce, but the mini video essays really give us the reps to be able to then work on the bigger stuff a bit slower.
Totally. So I'm looking forward to that, but I guess you're right. It's just about having a little bit of everything, and then having like, I guess those documentaries, when I see them, they're so well done as well. Like, everything about it's just so cinematic, and it's great. No, they're great to watch. So I just want to go on to like the final bit really about your upcoming concerts and stuff. So in terms of set list, are you going to be playing your album, or is there going to be I know you did say, right, that you have your lifetime to create your first album. That's right, and then 2 years for your second. I thought that was quite clever. And is that the case, do you think? Well, so I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but are you already thinking about writing for your next album? Is that like already on the cards?
Well, first, I can't take credit for that saying, where it's like you have your lifetime to write your first album and 2 years to write the second. I cannot also remember who said that, but it is a common theme, and it's why people often have a flop with their second album, because they rushed it out, or they were given 6 months to record it. And how do you do it? It's such a huge amount of material that you need to write way more than goes into the album, and then you need to make that album a real significant, great body of work. I've been writing because quite a lot of the songs for the first album have existed for a long time. So I'd already been writing, way before I even began recording the first album. I think I have my process established for figuring out what the second album is, and it's this acoustic album that I did called Songbook Volumes 1 and 2. I think I'll do Songbook Volumes 3 and 4, where maybe I'll record 25 new songs. I think I have about 30, but they won't all make it. And I'll record them, figure them out. Whilst recording them, I like doing it sort of one take, acoustic guitar, vocals at the same time, to click track, and just playing it and playing it and playing it, messing with it, changing stuff until I get the final take. Then I move on to the next song. And that just sort of helped me show the audience as well that there are two sides to me. There's this very raw songwriter, and then there's the polished, performer artist. And the only thing that I think would be exciting for the second album is to not just make it how I made this one. So I want to think maybe a little bit more creatively about the delivery of it. We had a process where if I hadn't released it track by track on Spotify every month for 11 months, I wouldn't have had this like lead time to be continuing to work on YouTube videos, but also working on the new material of the next album. But I think, you know, it's just so interesting that Super Sexy Heartbreak really, really served a purpose to show me that I do have an audience that likes my music. That was great to see. Not just my YouTube videos, but they also like my original songs. And then to be able to take it out on the road is really, really exciting. But yeah, I think the second album will be a little bit more of a show. Maybe that's where I'll leave it. But I also don't want to talk about it too soon because I don't want the endorphins from, you know, when you talk about something too much and then you actually just get all the benefits of talking about the novel you haven't written yet and then you never write the novel. So I have to be a little bit careful because I know myself. But yeah, I've already been like a little bit like not annoyed at all, but maybe slight frustration that I have to wait on these new songs. So I'm going to open the show with a half-hour acoustic set. So I'm going to be my own support act. And then I'll have a little break and people can go get a drink. And then we'll do a full run-through, full band of the album. And then to end, we'll do some of my like most popular tracks that have been around the longest, full band. So yeah, it will be really cool. Because I just felt like with a set list, you want the U-shape arc. And if I were to muddle the album, I'd ruin all the hard work that I also put into the set list of the album, where it's like, well, I want to begin with this upbeat song and then end on this upbeat song. And in between, I want to tell a story. So if I muddle it too much, then it'll kind of be a little bit out of place. So why not? It's the Super Sexy tour, do the Super Sexy run through, and then finish with some of the bangers. my own self-described bangers.
I guess that must be quite a hard process select, and even having to select the ones that make it to your album, and then the set list as well, of course, must be quite difficult. I guess you don't want to leave any of your babies out as well.
I asked a lot of friends and my sort of like, you know, I have my team of people that I just go, is this good enough? Is this not good enough? Does it vibe with you? Does it click with you? No? Okay, right. And it's always like, it's like editing a video. You get really, really good at cutting out all the crap. And same, I have to, now with the size of the audience as well, I have to be a little less sensitive to everything. So, you know, it's also one of those things that I've been really talking about and thinking about a lot recently. It's like, I don't even have to hear the feedback from the audience. All I need to worry about is how am I feeling when I'm playing this? Because I think I already know the answer. You know how like when someone criticizes you, the things that hurt the most are the things you already know. You know, they're already your insecurities. YouTube comments about me in more generalized way, I'm like, cool, whatever. You're just shouting into the void, fine. But the ones where they're like, oh, she could have tried harder on that passage of that guitar part, or just maybe something along the sound, or me being a little bit sloppy or whatever, that hurts the most. And I knew it already. So yeah, same with songs, same with anything creative. So, you know, you do have to be, quality control. You can't just not everything you do is genius. It's hard. When we're artists and we're sensitive and emotional, it's really hard to hear that. But sadly, not everything we do is genius.
Well, I think a lot of what you do and everything that I'm just really authentically really, really excited about your coming and seeing you. I think you're coming to Glasgow on the 30th of September. St. Luke's, great venue. Have you ever played in front of a Glaswegian crowd before?
I have played in Glasgow. I just can't quite remember the name of the venue, but it was like proper small. Must have been 50 capacity and probably only 20 people turned up. And that was maybe my tour in 2018 when I had a small YouTube following. So I was like, cool, I'm going to sell out this venue. And I didn't. And I think the same pattern, I've just made the same mistake maybe as well with this tour. But yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it'll do. I'm sure it'll do very well. And you're going to be all over the UK, right? So you've got gigs pretty much in every corner. So everybody was going to be able to see you. So I'm going to encourage all my audience, to get out there and get tickets. There'll be links in the description. I'll be sending out emails, and hopefully I can enjoy as well with some of my audience a great night of music. And I'm so chuffed that you're going to have like the acoustic set and the band set up as well. I'm really looking forward to that.
Me too. I mean, for the guitar nerds as well, I have to play my Martin, and then I have to show some electrics.
I don't know. I was at the John Mayer concert, the acoustic one, solo earlier on, and yeah, just there's something just sweet about just one person and an acoustic guitar. So I'm really excited about that, Mary. So I can't wait to see you live, and
I can't wait to meet you. I mean, you have to. Yeah, we'll have to organise something and get you over to soundcheck if you can make it, or say.
Yeah, definitely. I'll buy you a pint for sure.
I think sadly, well, it have to be a non-alcoholic beer because it's a long run and I'm super scared about losing my voice already. And so even now I'm like, okay, I should probably start cutting out alcohol. I need to be getting to the gym every single day. I need to be running my set list every single day. We've only got 48 days left at the time of recording this. So yeah, it's going to come around pretty quick.
I'm sure. And again, I'm sure it will do well. And I'm just wishing you the biggest success. And again, thank you so much for coming on the channel. It's been an absolute honour. I've been following you for a long time. So I'm just a huge fan, as you can tell. So thank you.
It'd be great to meet you, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Yeah, you too. All right, well, take it easy, Mary, and I guess I'll see you in September.
See you in September.